sound loud, a little intimidating. I have some notes because there's so much to say. There was a little boy named Jeff, and Jeff loved to build with wood unit blocks and with Playmobil, and he would set up stages because he loved to develop scenes and still loves theater. Was at Steppenwolf yesterday. At 5, he started to write his own stories and draw pictures with his stories, especially on the walls of our townhouse in Hyde Park, which I had him scrub off. Still some smiley faces existed. Jeff loved sports, especially the Cubs, and he loved playing basketball, and he loved theater. And he was an excellent student, and he began to star in plays when he was only 7 years old in the Hyde Park area. But in 1992, his family moved to Oak Park, which my daughter described as, my younger daughter, when she was in 3rd grade, described as, you know, Mommy, Hyde Park's integrated and Oak Park's diverse. And if you know what I mean, you know what I mean. So he had many friends in Hyde Park, and that was a very integrated group of friends. Many were black and some were white. In 7th grade, he was still acting in plays when his family moved to Oak Park. He grew into a tall and handsome boy and starred in 3 plays while in junior high at Julian. The atmosphere was different, and the white boys wanted him to hang with them, so he was never quite comfortable. Basketball, theater, writing, reading, and history were his loves. He was involved in many plays in high school, and he starred in 3 plays, including Tom in Glass Menagerie and Tevye in Fiddler in the Roof. Part 2. During high school, he was influenced, or he was smoking marijuana and some alcohol, and friends from Hyde Park who were gang wannabes, he was influenced by them, got into some trouble. He maintained his grades, but began to change junior year when he was taking algebra trig. And he was suspended out of school for passing some pot to somebody else who was also an honor student, to make you think. He wanted to go to Illinois State University for theater because that's where Gary Sinise and Malkovich went. Malkovich didn't finish, actually, but Gary Sinise did. But during the behavior before going to ISU, his behavior really started to change. And he would look up at the sky, and he would talk to me about what was in the sky, and it was like inanimate objects. I did not see them. He began to hallucinate before he went to ISU. And when he went to ISU, he had a psychotic break in the middle of the September. This is a normal age for young men to be diagnosed with a psychosis. And we went down there, and both his father and I took him back, returned his books, and he was suicidal on the way home. I'm telling you, we suffered. He suffered. We just didn't know what was going on. Like many parents, we thought, oh, it's just, drugs. It's just, maybe he took something and that's what's going on with him. But it wasn't, because he had a psychotic break, and we took him to a psychologist. Can I take this off? I don't need it.
Okay.
We took him to a psychologist, and we took him, there you go. And we took him to a psychiatrist who diagnosed him that year with clinical depression. But he had gone back to school, and he had come back to Oak Park, and he was like, his clothes, he was lost his clothes on the bus. I mean, clearly there was something wrong. So this went on for a while, and eventually, because he loved school and theater so much, he went to take 2 courses at Triton.
And wouldn't you know, with major depression, he tried out for Antigone and got the lead as Creon. So theater was in his heart, big time. And then he was on medication, and we took him out every week to a psychiatrist named Marina Goodfriend Levy. Isn't that a wonderful name for a psychiatrist? And to Wilmette, and he was like in a day program, and he began to go to Columbia, and then he was on a play in Austin Gardens, but he didn't feel right from the medication. He didn't like the way he moved. You know, you gain a lot of medication on antipsychotics. So he went cold turkey on his meds. And he went down and down and down. So he had to drop out of Columbia. And we got to the point where he couldn't manage anymore at home. And one night I smelled some smoke, and he did smoke. A lot of people with mental illness smoke a lot because it's very calming to them. And he had dropped some cigarette butts on the carpet, but he only used to smoke outside. And I smelled it, and I went down there. And I called the police, and I called Thrive Mental Health Services. And they took him to McNeil, where that's the only psychiatric hospital around, by the way. We don't have any here. And took him to McNeil, where he met the doctor, Ralph Cusick, psychiatrist Ralph Cusick. While at McNeil, he was then had another episode and went to the University of Chicago Hospital, and he was diagnosed with schizophrenia on his 19th birthday. So this is going to be getting better. All right, so we went to court with Dr. Cusick, and he got Jeffrey, actually from this judge who never prescribed mandated medication, he prescribed it. And Jeffrey was like, you know, hey, I'm left-wing, man. You can't do this to me, you know. I've got my rights. I said, but we're here to support you. We know you've got your rights, but you're not going to get well unless you're medicated. And so I found a place called Kankakee Terrace, which is next to Bourbonnais, it's in Bourbonnais, called Kankakee Terrace, and it's next to the Bears training camp, which he liked. And there's a college right behind it, Nazarene College. So he went there and we saw him every weekend. We went out to Kankakee. He went bowling without his glasses and had strikes. I couldn't believe it. He wouldn't wear his glasses. They did something to him, but he had strikes. And finally, I was taking a class at NAMI, the family to family class, which I highly recommend. And there were a lot of parents like me in it. And there was a woman there who was at the University of Illinois, and she was doing research on a new medication named Abilify. And I said to Dr. Wynn, the psychiatrist at Kankakee Terrace, do you think you can wean Jeffrey off of the antipsychotic he's on and try him on Abilify? In 2 weeks, he changed. 2 weeks, he became Jeff again. I could hardly believe it. He had been so intimidating to his sister, his younger sister. And we went in the car up to Kankakee, and he sat there, and they sang together, because they always sang. My kids are really musical. I couldn't believe it, because he was so intimidating to her, which hurts her to this day, but she's good friends with him. And finally, on Abilify, he became much higher functioning, and he was in Thresholds in Kankakee, and I can't say enough about how wonderful Thresholds was. And he had a wonderful counselor there. She took him back and forth to Kankakee College, and he got his AA degree, or he had enough credits to transfer into a junior school. And he came back. Oh, he told them when he was there that he was an actor, but they thought, oh no, he has schizophrenia, he's just hallucinating about this. Well, community theater was doing on Golden Pond, and he tried out for a part, and he got it. And all his friends, called Shortbridge from Oak Park, came to see him in this play. They always stuck with him. I have the deepest gratitude to them. And so then after Thresholds, he came back to Oak Park, And when he was in Oak Park, he was also in a Thresholds facility or apartment that I found. But he was taking 4 courses, and he was taking 2 buses to Northeastern. And they said, you don't really need to be here. We don't need to teach you how to mop the floor or make your bed. You know, you're going to school, you're taking 4 courses. And he was still a little awkward. He was always a little awkward. He didn't run as fast as the other kids on baseball, but he was a great pitcher. He couldn't roller skate like his sisters and learned how to ride a bike kind of late. So the balance was off. But anyway, after he graduated from Northeastern, he started going to the NAMI drop-in center in Oak Park on Harrison. And that totally started changing things. And so the drop-in center, it still exists and it's still going strong. People noticed how talented he was, and he leading groups. So he did peer-to-peer more than anybody else in the state of Illinois. And he did Ending the Silence. And he ran a lot of groups at the drop-in center for people diagnosed with mental illness. And finally, he went to Thrive in Oak Park and had a job there at the Transitional Living Program, helping others. And after that, he went to NAMI and he studied to be a recovery specialist. And he then began to work at NAMI's new living rooms, which are fantastic all around the burbs. And he counseled other people with symptoms of having mental illness. And then he said about 4 years ago, then one thing he always wanted to do was direct compulsion. So if you know compulsion, it's a story of Leopold and Loeb, the murderers. They were from Kenwood, and we lived in Hyde Park, so we went to Kenwood. We looked at where they were and where they dumped the body, which was south. And we came back, and Village Theater in Oak Park was closing. So he said, I wanted to direct compulsion. So I found out what it meant to be a producer, which means you get insurance. So I put out the money for the insurance and did the program, and he charged $15, $20, and we were packed. We were packed every night that the show went on, which was 3 nights. And after that, Jeff decided, he told me about 5 years ago, he said, Mom, I want to go back to graduate school. I said, really? You know, I'm thinking, does he want to do theater? No, I want to go back in social work. Okay, so he wrote this wonderful paper for Dominican. And about 2 years ago, he actually got his master's degree in social work at Dominican. And he gave himself a party at Jimmy's. He paid for it. He had this full-time job as a recovery specialist, and he had health insurance and everything. And then he graduated about 2 years ago, and he told me in the summertime, and he gave himself the party, like I said, at Jimmy's that he paid for. And then he told me about last summer, he said, Mom, I want to go get my LCSW, licensed clinical social worker. I said, wow, Jeff. And so that's what he's doing. He's working full-time now with Pillars, a big social service agency in Berwyn, as a community outreach specialist. And he helps people here in Forest Park and, all over to help them maintain their meds and, to become, he says it's not recovery, it's becoming healthy. That's how he puts it. And so he's studying now to get his LCPC and working full-time at Pillars, and I couldn't be prouder of it. And I'm just going to leave this here. This was in 2013. There were a lot of articles in the papers current about Jeff. Over a dozen years, Oak Park cops have learned to listen first. And so this is an article, Policing Meets Mental Health. And then this one was done here at the Forest Park Library, sharing stories of mental illness with teachers and parents in Forest Park. It's parents and teachers as allies, which is great, and I'd love to do it for the schools, with NAMI's permission. It kind of has the history and how we became involved with NAMI. So I'm just going to leave it up here if you want to take a look at it, okay?